Wonderful Melbourne night, isn't it? With the weather changing and winter approaching. So thank you very much for your kind introduction. And thank you folks for braving a cold Melbourne night just for being out here tonight. I've said hello to a few of you, but for everyone else you can probably detect a slightly foreign accent. And when I'm in Queensland I tell them I'm from Melbourne, which gets a pretty good laugh up north. But my parents were Danish missionaries and I grew up in Africa. English is my third language. So I grew up speaking fluent Danish with mum and dad. I spoke Zulu, which was the indigenous language, and then I headed off to school, unable to speak English. And at that point, I'd not really had any white friends, as we would say over there. So someone briefed my parents up and said, look, you've got to teach them something. So they taught me to say, good morning, teacher, which is all I knew. So I said that to everyone, the teachers, the kids, the cleaners, the gardeners, and that was kind of my start in life. But fast forward to 2001, I arrived in Australia, and I've really been focused in three key areas. The first one is leadership. I'm passionate about leadership. I think leaders set the tone in business and in this country. And I was very lucky to work with BHP and run a 4-day residential leadership program at the worst possible location, the Laguna with Sundays. It ran for 6 years. 68 times I had to jump on a plane and fly up to Ely Beach and spend some time there, but them's the breaks. So leadership number one. Culture, secondly, has been a core focus of mine as well, and I was lucky to work with John McFarlane and his team at ANZ, and we ran a global culture transformation program, which still John Cotter at Harvard says is one of the best transformation programs he's ever seen. So leadership and culture have been where I've been playing for quite some time, until recently. And that's through personal experience myself, but my focus... where did you find that?
Someone found it.
It's mine.
There you go.
I'm glad it's back. But I've been focusing in the last couple of years helping leaders create psychologically safe workplaces. Because I think we have some challenges in the workplace at the moment around workplace stress, which I'll touch on a little bit. And the key challenge in the workplace, because I'm looking at this audience which is quite diverse, I might talk a bit about work, not too much, but the key challenge there is two things. One is meeting legal requirements, but also looking how you can leverage psychological safety to a competitive advantage in the workplace. So that's me. The third thing I do is work in personal happiness, which is why we're here tonight, and we're here to just talk through my book and just a couple of my ideas. All right, it's on. And it's not working. Okay. Lessons in happiness from the third world. So I've been working in places like the Golden Door and others, and just really working in the personal happiness space. Now it's an interesting title, Lessons in Happiness from the Third World. It could also be called Dealing with Depression, an Alternative Approach. And that's where we're going to go tonight. So what's lying ahead of you? Well, firstly, an opportunity just to raise some personal awareness. Or for some of us, in our busy lives, just to stop and take stock and think about where we are at in the world at this moment in time, and more importantly, what's happening around us in terms of our friends, our family, our colleagues, our employees, if you're in business, etc. The second thing is to discuss an alternative approach and see what might be a different way of approaching things. And thirdly, you can't go away without a couple of practical tips and hints that you can put into place straight away. So let's kick off. It's not a day goes past that you don't open the newspaper and you read a story. It could be a celebrity, it could be a Robin Williams, it might be our sports stars, Geelong this week talking about the return of one of their players, but it's all around us. Depression, anxiety and stress in the workplace. So I thought I'd run you through some facts just for us to stop and think for a moment as to the world that we live in. At a personal level, in 2010, here's a statistic, 25% of adult Australians were on medication or seeing a physician for depression, stress or anxiety. That's 1 in 4. And you might argue that we prescribe too easily. I'm happy to pay that. Some physicians say the number's actually higher than 25%, but it's more about what's the trend that we're building and what's the trend that we're seeing out there at the moment. Clearly to me this is not just a flavour of the month, but it's actually a reality of our time when you start listening to stories and hearing what's happening in families. At work, 82% of Australians readily admit to wasting up to 4 hours a day, every day, being unproductive at work. They might work a 14-hour day, but there's no sense of purpose and no sense of engagement, which is a very interesting statistic because the cost to the economy is close on $32 billion. A colleague of mine, Sean Acker of Harvard University, released a white paper just last year or the year before, and here's his statement. He says, we put warning labels on smoking packs, maybe we should put warning labels on companies that have low social support. And he goes on to say that leaders have got it wrong. It's not about leaders driving change, it's more about turning people onto the benefits they get from actually creating socially supportive environments at work. So even in the academic world right now, there's a whole lot of conversation that leads to, we're hurting people in the workplace, psychologically and mentally and emotionally. Another interesting fact is that in Australia, out of 9,000 people working in 12 industry sectors, in Australia and New Zealand, my apologies, 42% report being tired at the start of their day. So we're coming into work tired, we're coming into work stressed. This is a colleague of mine who has an organisation called Be Intent, and she's doing some great work in helping people increase their inspiration, their energy and their focus. What about people coming into the workforce? And I was hoping for a cross-generational group tonight. I think the students are all doing their assignments. It's that time of the year, and they've got deadlines to get them in. But if you start to think of the trend that we've been looking at now, 1 in 4 Australians, what's happening in the workplace, etc., what about the next generation, the people that are coming into work? This for me is very personal. My sister is a single mum. She has a beautiful daughter, Samantha, who I've known since the day she was born. And at the age of 11, due to a very messy divorce, Samantha stopped going to school. It's just what she did. Started self-harming, put a whole lot of pressure on my sister who had to quit her job, and she's now a full-time carer, and it's had a ripple effect not just on her and her daughter, but me and the family, etc., etc. And I thought, that's really interesting. Why is that kind of stuff happening? And then I started doing my research, and some interesting stats came out of it. Here's the first one. There are 28,000 teenagers like Sam in Victoria. This is the next generation that's coming into the workforce. Just school refusers, school avoiders. Often it's depression, it's stress, it's anxiety, it's other things. Do you kind of get the idea that this is not just a flavour of the month, but it's actually a reality of what's going on around us? By the way, I'm not trying to get you all depressed. I'm just giving you a couple of facts and statistics. There is an upside to the journey as well. But add in this, in 2003, 55,500 Victorians under the age of 20 are being prescribed antidepressants. And I believe that the entry age is getting younger year by year by year. So what's the big picture? What's really going on? Stress-related claims have doubled, and this is an old statistic, 2004, because Medibank will be releasing their latest research soon. But in that short period of time, stress-related claims have doubled. And the World Health Organization estimates that by 2020, which is only 5 years away, depression will be the second most debilitating condition in the developed world. The last one, for those of you who are engaged in business, stress is costing business in a big way. Workers' compensation claims for mental stress increased 83% in Australia from 1997 to 2004. And what's really interesting, that's only the people who are claiming, because it's probably a larger population in the workforce as well. So in the context of that and that kind of background, this is a reality of our time, and it's something that we need to have a look at. So I'd like to share with you my story. And growing up in humble beginnings, I was in Australia and somehow worked through the corporate ladder, ended up working for a global organisation in the Paris end of Melbourne, you know, the Paris end of Collins Street, which was just fantastic. Beautiful building, marble floors, couldn't have thought of a better career, beautiful package. But at that time, I was caught in the crossfire between two directors who were trying to oust each other and get control. I was a bit of the meat in the middle of the sandwich. That is also a few years after my own marriage had ended. And no surprise here, but it didn't take too long before I did encounter the darkest moments of my life, and I went through depression for 18 months. And what was interesting for me during that time was that, you know, I would wake up in the morning unable to go to work. Or if I got to work, I'd get there at 10. Get home, self-medicate, which we all know what that is, and this carried on day after day after day after day. I had this job, I was a national manager of course, and that's a very, very important role. So I'd prowl the corridors with papers in my hands, pretending I was going to a meeting. I wasn't going to a meeting, I just wanted to look like I was going to a meeting. You know, I was able to bluff my way through that for 18 months. But the thing about depression and anxiety for, and maybe some people here have experienced or are close to family or friends that are going through that, is that sometimes you know what you should do, but you just don't care. You become indifferent. I liken it to like being in quicksand. You're just treading the sand, you know you should reach for help, you know you should reach out, but you just choose not to do that. Anxiety is a very different beast to depression as well, because it freezes your thinking. I can remember having a lunch on a Sunday afternoon, and it took me 3 hours to decide whether we should eat inside or whether we should eat outside. I just stood there, unable to make any decisions. It continued, it got worse, and finally I got to the end, and I made a phone call. And the double whammy for me was this: what do you think I was doing for a living? Teaching positive psychology. Motivation, you know, happiness, and all that kind of stuff. But I was stuck in this quicksand and I just couldn't get out. And I made that final phone call to my sister and I said, look, that's it, it's me, I'm done, I've failed, it's over. And I'm leaving Melbourne, I'm going to go into the bush and I'll find some friends and sit under a tree and drink beer for the rest of my life, but I'm broken and it's done. And that conversation was a life-changing conversation, because for her as a single mum on a very low income, she said two things that stopped me in my tracks. Here was the first one. She said, you know what, it doesn't matter what happens, you'll always have a roof over your head at my place. The second thing she said was, and how good if you fail? Imagine if you hit rock bottom and you recover. What a great lesson for the kids, that you can actually recover and you can go places. So all of a sudden, instead of just standing in this quicksand, I could actually take my feet out of the quicksand and I felt like I was standing on solid ground. The problems weren't solved at all. There was a whole lot of stuff to do, but I knew I could take some time and I could breathe, and that things were in some kind of way going to be okay. The challenge for me at the time is I'd been on medication. It wasn't really doing much for me. I'm sorry. I think medication certainly has a place in certain conditions, but I don't think it's always the right solution. And I've been seeing a counsellor and that hadn't been helping either. Anyway, so there I am on solid ground, able to breathe. I still had to go to work every morning on the train, in the rain, the cold, the wind. You all know Melbourne, the suburban train lines. But I needed to do a few things that could change change the course of my future. And what happened for me was really, really interesting. There was one big question. As I put my feet on solid ground and started to look forward again, I started thinking about where I grew up. My parents were missionaries in Africa. We lived with the poorest of the poor. You know, I had no white friends. I really was growing up in the community. And the big question that hit me was this: why is it that people who appear to have the least in the world find it so much easier to be joyful than we do in the West? And you speak to many people who've travelled to Africa or Asia or a third world country, and often that's the story that comes back. These people are just so happy. They got nothing, but they just seem to be so happy. And the more I pondered that question, the more I started thinking about my childhood and my upbringing, and I started asking the question of, so what are they doing that we've actually forgotten in the West? Or in our busy lives become so busy that we just don't pay attention to anymore. I did a lot of social research and thinking about the stuff that I was teaching. I ended up writing a book, which is the one that's been mentioned once or twice, and it's really cool. It's called Lessons in Happiness from the Third World. What have we forgotten in the West? And I'm going to share a little bit about what that book's about in a moment. But for those of you who want a bit of a humour break around about now, that was then, during that time. Gosh, I'm pretty vulnerable and transparent, and that was 3 years ago running the Melbourne Half Marathon. So my whole life has shifted completely. I'm travelling the world, I'm doing a lot of speaking, I'm impacting people, organisations, I'm speaking to executive groups. There's been a total shift in my life, and it wasn't about going on antidepressants or seeing a counsellor. There were some other things that were missing. So I started thinking about the question. I kind of thought, well, what is it? What is it that's happening in the third world? The second thing for me that happened was that, okay, I was out of the quicksand, but that doesn't mean things are fixed. I then had a challenge in my life around sustaining happiness going forward. And a couple of things. The first thing that I realized is this, that happiness is a daily ritual. never leaves you, depression, but you can put some things in place that become a daily ritual. So that was my first realization. There's stuff that I need to do on a daily basis to focus on my own happiness. The second thing is that there are 3 core ingredients out of my research in the third world for happiness. I'm going to talk about them in a moment. And if they're missing, there's a huge gap in terms of us actually fundamentally as human beings being able to maintain our happiness. And the third thing for me, and that was a really interesting one, and if you know people or have people in your world that are going through depression, recovery is not a straight line. You don't stop here and just start going up one day. There are times when you spiral down again. But the secret is being aware of when that's happening and also having some go-to strategies and some safe places that you can go to in that moment when it's happening. You know, when a big truck's going down the hill and they've got those sand beds next to the highway, so when you're in trouble you can just pull into the sand bed. I kind of think of it from that perspective that when you do hit the hard time, where's your sand pit, where's your safety net, where's your strategy to stop you spiraling all the way down. So those for me were three major kind of insights as to the way forward. So for me there are 3 ingredients to happiness that the West has kind of forgotten. And if you look at the third world, the first one is community. Just think about that for a moment. In the third world there's family, or but not walk away from the light or the mic. Family, there's extended family. Everyone feels valued. Everyone has a place. Everybody belongs. Older people mentor younger people. In fact, older people are actually welcome and respected. You go through rites of passage when you're a teenager to know what your role is. There's a strong sense of community and connection. When I look around the West today, I think there's a big challenge around that. You know, we have single-parent families, people move to different places for work, a lot of people are working from home, it's a mobile workforce. The whole sense of community seems to have had a huge impact and been taken away. I wrote a lot about community in my book, and I'd like to just touch on a couple of elements. And again, either for yourselves or if there are significant people in your lives, these may be some good ideas, good conversation starters to have with them. So the first element for me is about belonging. Myself, but are there others that I can belong with as well? And it's really interesting. I did a lot of work with ANZ, and we did a bit of, anybody here ex-ANZ or chaired ANZ or been on the board of ANZ, or because I know there's some very important people in this room. But anyway, part of the training that we did was a bit new agey. You know, we taught people meditation and we did all this stuff, and we were trained by McKinsey, and good old Geeta's quite a metaphysical lady herself, and we went away on this training program for 10 days. And one night she asked the group a question. Now, let me just paint a picture of Geeta. We were all scared of her. In her 60s, about yay small, very, very incisive, powerful mind, and she would ask these questions. And because we were all trying to qualify as facilitators, you didn't want to look stupid. So you put your hand up. You'd have no idea what the answer was, but you just would put your hand up because you wanted to be seen. And I remember one night we were out at Woodend, and she said, before you go to bed tonight, I'd like you to ponder this question in your meditation. And when you come back tomorrow, I would like to hear the answer. And the question is, why did the pebble return to the beach? Good night. I did not sleep that night. I tossed and turned in my bed. I could picture pebbles flying all over the universe. I had no idea on earth why the pebble returned to the beach. It was only when I was writing my book about community that I got the answer. The pebble returned to the beach because that's where it belonged. That was my metaphysical answer to the question 7 years later. But to me, there's a thing about belonging which is critical in terms of community. And often I talk with people, retirees, or people that are widowed or have lost someone, and they go, I don't have anywhere to belong. My answer to them is, find somewhere to belong. There are places everywhere, you know, whether it's Rotary, whether it's community service organisations, there are places where you can belong. I was quite moved. I was doing a talk for one of the Rotary clubs, and there was a gentleman there in a wheelchair. And he used to travel from Geelong all the way up to the city to this Rotary Club meeting and travel back. And he's in his wheelchair, and he's doing community service, and he was out there in the rain selling tickets to the footy and whatever. And I was doing this talk, and at the end he stopped and he said to the group, he said, this whole thing about identity and belonging, he said, if you don't have any friends, then be a friend. And that struck me. There wasn't a dry eye in the room either, but that really struck me, because often, you know, we say, oh, I've got nowhere to belong. If you don't have any friends, then be a friend. Reach out and find friends and find a place to belong. The second thing is when you think about community, which is really strong in the third world, people have got a very, very clear sense of identity. As you grow up, you know who you are, where you are, how you fit into the community, etc. And you've got this identity which is beyond work. It's you as a person, and you're clear on it. Often do talks to an organisation called Tech, the Executive Connection, like the CEO Institute, and I go away on retreats with them, pretty grand. And the partners are there as well, and we're having this conversation on identity, and I stop and I say, if I took away your job title, who are you? And often you see the wives look at me and their eyes roll a little bit. But isn't it so funny that in the West, we kind of our job defines us? People introduce themselves as I'm the vice president of, or I'm the sales of, and it's all about our job defines us. And then one day, we retire, we get retrenched, our business crashes, and we don't have the job anymore, and people go into depression because their whole identity is based on one thing, their work. Whereas again, if you think about identity, what are the other aspects that make up identity? A father, a coach, a this, a that, and the rest of it. So for me, the second element there, I guess, is identity. And for some of you, you might be reflecting on your own lives as I talk through this, or you might be reflecting on your children or your grandchildren or friends or others, and maybe this is a conversation that we could have with people around identity. The third thing in the third world is they're very big on customs and traditions and rituals, and they get together and do stuff. So whether it's before the harvest or after the harvest or whatever, there's this whole sense of coming together and doing things, and religious things, cultural things, etc., etc. There's some communities that are very strong. I mean, I worked for a Jewish company in South Africa for 7 years and absolutely loved the whole notion of Friday nights, with the family, and this is what we do. Or my Italian friends have sausage making festivals and all this kind of stuff where we have these traditions and rituals. Even in families, there are traditions and rituals. Does anyone remember that tradition called Sunday lunch? You remember that one? No mobile phones, no Bluetooth, you'd sit down, you'd eat, and you would talk forever. Where's it gone? So what are some of the traditions and rituals that you can bring into your own life and space? Mentoring and rites of passage. I find this really interesting working with a lot of teenagers. If you look at the third world, especially the South African experience, when boys and girls turn 15 or 16, they actually get taken away from the tribe for an initiation process, which takes up to 2 weeks. And of course, the mothers weep because their little boy is going away, and then when he comes back to the tribe, he's going to come back in the role of a man. And he's going to talk to her as men talk to a woman. But he's also going to be the youngest man in the pecking order of all the men in the tribe, and they will mentor him. And he will know his role, and he'll know his position. Where's that gone in the West? My sister has, as I mentioned earlier, my niece Samantha, but she also has a son Daniel, and Daniel, absent father, quite aggressive, bullying his mum, bullying his sister, and got to about 16 and he wasn't doing well at school, and he was fighting in the playground and all this kind of stuff. And I mean serious fighting, not just fisticuffs, with a whole bunch of Sudanese guys in a gang. And I kind of thought, what can I do about this? I'm his uncle. So I took him for 8 weeks on a trip around the world, just me and him. Went to Asia, went to Africa, went to London, New York, went to Canada, we went to Mexico, because I was thinking it's time for the old bull and the young bull to have a bit of a chat. At this point, normally people say, can you be my uncle as well, please? And you would think that you could open up a teenage boy, and have a conversation driving through the desert for 3 days. Nothing. Didn't want to talk about emotions. All long plane trips, in business, nothing. We finally had an argument in Mexico. And at some point he said to me, where's the us in this journey, Uncle Pete? And I cracked it and I thought, hang on, I've taken you to Denmark to see your grandparents, Africa to see where you were born, Asia to see your friends, and now you throw this at me. So I stormed off. And I went to the hotel room, I got there, I took his passport, I threw it down, and I said, that's it! You're on your own, you're 16, next 7 days, we're in Cancun at this point, in Mexico, you're on your own. And I'm going to go to the bank and draw some Mexican money, and when I come back, I want you out of here. Had a little bit of a conflict. So I went to the bank and I thought, this is the moment. This is the time for the conversation. Best I prepare. Went to the pub, got myself a beer, started making notes. I want to take the emotion out of the conversation, got back to the room. He was gone. He was gone, his passport was gone, and my US dollars were gone. And I thought, uh-oh. How am I going to explain to his mother that I lost her 16-year-old in Mexico? Then I figured it was going to get dark, and it did, and he came back. At about 10 o'clock that night, there was a knock on the door. Uncle Pete, what's this all about? And I said, well, thank you so much for asking. This is about your role in the family. This is about the impact that you have. This is about responsibility. This is about your life. And we had this big mentoring conversation. And again, I don't want to take all the credit for it, but today he's finishing his final year psychology. He's a reservist. He's earning money. He's bought his own car. He's not always perfect. Let's not be honest about that. Let's not gild the lily, but a huge shift in his life. And I tend to think about this in terms of our children in the West. I've got a lot of friends when their kids turn 60, they take them away on a rites of passage experience. They talk about their role. It's just something that the third world does really well. And the final thing is acts of service. You know, if you look in the third world, people are just willing to do things and contribute and help with others. Yet in the West we become quite selfish in many ways as well, although I could be preaching to the converted here with all the Rotarians in the room as well. So for me, the first part, or the first kind of key ingredient of happiness and having this in your life is community. And, you know, it's really interesting because when things are fine, it's not a problem. But it's when the proverbial hits the fan. If you don't have a strong community, if you don't have a place where you belong, if you're not sure of your identity, that's when it gets really difficult. So, you know, in the workplace even, you know, I know a lot of people that will work on a floor of 100 people and not even know more than 5 or 10 of them. Everyone comes to work with the earphones in our ear, and we don't connect even in the workplace where we spend 80% of our lives. The whole notion of community for me is a bit of a challenge. That's why Accor was saying that, you know, we need to get people back into social support in the workplace. The second thing for me is purpose or spirituality. And again, if you think about the stats that we saw earlier, 82% of Australians come to work and waste 3 hours a day being unproductive. No sense of purpose, no sense of engagement, no nothing. You go to the third world, there's very clear purpose or there's very clear spirituality. Maybe my purpose is to wake up, to catch a fish to feed my family, but I wake up with something to do, and something that I have to do. And some of the things around purpose for me that are very clear in the third world are, you know, it's clearly defined and I can articulate it. Now, I am 100% clear on my purpose in life, and that's a fantastic place to be, and it took a very, very long time. That's not a grandiose purpose. I'm not on the Rainbow Warrior doing Greenpeace stuff, but I'm pretty clear on my purpose. If you ask me, I can tell you it's 3 things. So again, this whole notion of if you're thinking about your life, you know, what is your purpose? The second thing is connecting with it, almost daily, and reflecting. Is what I'm doing today actually aligned with what my purpose is in life? The third point is living and expressing your purpose. Now that's a really interesting one. My sister, for example, and part of my purpose is to be a good brother and a good uncle to my family. And in the old days, if she rang me with an issue, she's one of those, I almost got myself into a gender-specific comment, which I shouldn't have. She's just one of those people who can't talk for less than an hour and a half. So she would ring while I was in the middle of work, and I had stuff to do. And I started resenting those calls until the penny dropped for me as to what my purpose in life is, to be a good brother. Today she can call me for 3 or 4 hours, and I'm okay, work can wait. I'll go and spend a week at her place while she goes away to recharge her batteries. It doesn't matter. I'm so clear. And when I'm doing that stuff, I actually feel good. Forget the work. I feel good because I'm doing part of what my purpose is. The other thing is using your purpose and values in your decision making. So if you're clear on those things, after my marriage ended, I was in South Africa, and I've been working with McKinsey. Great organisation. They were doing what's called transformational facilitation. It's a different space to be in. And I was invited for a coffee with the CEO of McKinsey Africa. And I thought, oh, okay, interesting. Why do they want to talk with me? And they said, Pete, you know, we're having a challenge here because flying in facilitators of transformation is very expensive. We're sorry to hear about you and Jackie, your partner, but we'd like to make you an offer. And I said, what's the offer? He said, we'd like to offer you 100 days work a year, guaranteed for 3 years. But you have to live in South Africa. And we'll pay you $3,500 US a day. I thought, right, okay, what do I do with the other 256 days? Whatever you want, start your own business, play golf. And that time I was financially challenged. And I said, can I call you on Monday? So I went back to my hotel. And at the end of the year, I looked at my values, what's been important, how am I living my life. I actually do a values card sorting process. And right on top of my values is a value called family. You know, it was the easiest phone call to make on the Monday. Thank you for that offer. It's really generous. But family is an important value of mine. I need to be in Melbourne. And this is pre the stuff happening with my sister and her daughter. So being clear on our purpose and our values is just quite critical around our happiness. And then thirdly and finally is connecting with something bigger than ourselves. And again, if you look at the third world, people are so connected with nature. They're connected from a spiritual perspective. I have a friend in South Africa, and his wife drives him nuts. Absolutely nuts. Dave's a businessman. He's a money kind of guy. And she's got this belief, a little bit silly, but it's about connecting with nature. And she believes that you should walk on the grass, barefoot, for 10 minutes every day. That's what she does. Unfortunately, she doesn't pick her moments very well. When they're about to go off to a corporate function in their tuxedos and dressed up, she goes, Dave, wait, I haven't done my walk yet. And she'll stop and take off the stilettos and kind of do the walk in the grass. And we did one not too long ago, didn't we, on a Saturday afternoon, with my partner Cecile at the back of the room. But it's about this connection thing. What's really interesting is if you think about the cities that we live in, how often do we get to do that kind of stuff? When do we make time for that stuff? In New Zealand, they trialled a thing called green prescriptions recently, and we're doing it as well in certain parts of Victoria. And green prescriptions around mental health are quite interesting. So they looked at the cost per case of, counselling and drugs and all that kind of stuff and how expensive it is. And they've come up with these green prescriptions. And what that means is no medication, but here's a couple of things that you need to do. You need to exercise every day. You need to get out in nature. You've got to do all that kind of stuff. It's costing the government a whole lot less. And you know what? People are recovering from it. So there's something really powerful about making that time. And I guess what I offer to you is, how often do we do that? The third thing is gratitude. It blows me away when I'm in the third world and I experience gratitude. It's funny, something in the West, you hear people often saying things like, I'll be happy when? I'll be happy when I get the house, the car, the yacht, the job, the girlfriend, the whatever. I'll be happy when. Whereas in the third world, it's like, how can I be happy now, today, with what I've got? My young nephew Danny, who's now 24, says, Pete, my generation, we have a culture of entitlement. We don't know gratitude. We were born in the internet era. We press a button, we get stuff. That's the way it is. And maybe our generation of parenting is wanting to give them lots of stuff as well. But he says we actually have this culture of entitlement. So gratitude for me is a very, very powerful thing. And it's one of those that, again, has a huge impact on your state of happiness and well-being. So a couple of things. Just one is, and by the way, gratitude for me is an action word. It's not a belief or a character trait. It's actually an action word. So I often would say things like, I consciously show gratitude to others. What are the things that I deliberately do to show gratitude to others? Whether I'm calling someone just to thank them or acknowledge them or send them a card, or in the modern world probably an email or something, but conscious acts of showing gratitude to others. The second one is the toughest one, showing gratitude to yourself. We are so good at beating ourselves up for the stuff that we don't achieve and that we haven't done. And how often do we remember to say, you've actually done some good stuff this week. You've actually been a really good, whatever it is, father, uncle. We forget to do that. So making time to show yourself gratitude. Showing gratitude to something bigger than yourself again, and creating some rituals around that. And again, regular personal and family gratitude rituals. In the third world, it's quite heavily ensconced because there's a very strong spirituality in the third world. So meal times around giving thanks and saying grace and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't matter what your religious persuasion is, there's power in doing that. And I was at the Golden Door giving a talk not too long ago, and you meet all these strange people you've never seen before, and we're about to have dinner, and one of the ladies said, stop, can we do something before we have dinner? And we all kind of looked at her as if she's a bit loopy. She says, we've got a tradition at home with my family where we go around the table and each person says one thing they're grateful for today. Now I know you're all strangers, but would it be okay if we did that? Which we all did, of course, and you could sense the energy shift around the table. So again, what are some of the rituals that we can introduce in our families around gratitude? And then finally, true giving, kind of just giving, expecting nothing in return. My dad was, as I said, a missionary, and he trained the head of the ZCC, the Zionist Christian Church in Africa. It's a big church, they've got 5 million members. Every year they have an Easter conference in a place called Moriah. And we were up there for Barnabas Lechanyani's graduation, and I saw something I'd never seen before. They get over 1 million people for this Easter conference. Most of them have to walk to get there. There's lots of buses, but many of them walk. These are the poorest of the poor. These are the cleaners, these are the servants. Some of them, to get there, they take car tires and actually carve a shoe out of a car tire and that gives them mileage. They can walk a very, very long way. And they have these 3 days of celebration. And then on the last day, they take up an offering of gratitude to give back to the community. But unlike what we do in the West in a church with a little bucket, or everyone puts their stuff in, they get steel baths. Steel baths. And here are the people who've got absolutely nothing, singing and dancing with joy, putting their offerings into these big steel baths. And First National Bank in Petersburg, which is the nearest city, they close the branch on a Monday because there's truckloads of steel baths of money that have to be counted. And it's just a very powerful thing to see, and this whole notion of true giving. So what I'd like to do is just take you through a couple of happiness strategies, conscious of time, about 10 minutes. And but before I do that, I've been doing a whole lot of talking, so I'd like to do a little psychology experiment with you. What I'm going to ask you to do is have a conversation with the person next to you, just for 60 seconds. I'm going to time it. If there's 3 of you, you can make it a 3-way conversation. I'll make sure I said that right. Here are the rules. Rule number 1, you're only allowed to ask questions about anything, life, politics, sport, cooking, you name it, what people are doing, you're only allowed to ask questions. Rule number 2, you're not allowed to answer the question. So pretty much you're going to be talking for a minute, purely asking questions. Are you ready? Your time starts now. Go.
Watching people I know ask questions, I try not to answer them. It's really interesting. Sorry, looking at you know what I was saying. Some answers. Is this yours?
This is yours, not mine. That's why I start talking to most people. Okay, that's time. Thank you very much. That was 60 seconds. All right, let's just quickly debrief that one. Who found that a difficult challenge? Oh my goodness, nearly everybody in the room. That's really interesting. You know what it is? You know why that is? We're not used to asking questions. Often we're used to telling people what to do, blah, blah. Second debrief question. Who found that even though I said you're not allowed to answer the question, your brain went looking for the answers anyway? Who found that? Nearly everybody. I do a whole lot of work in leadership and influence and brain psychology. I always do this exercise with people. And the reason why I do it is because as a human being, our brain is wired to look for answers. If you're asking the brain a question, consciously or subconsciously, it'll go and look for the answer, even if the person's not there. So on the influencing leadership side, that's a very, very powerful tool. Why have I thrown it in here? Well, it's really interesting. How do you set yourself up for happiness? How do you train your brain? What's the stuff that you can do? One of my favourite quotes is by a guy called Albert Einstein. Some of you may know him, or of him. No one was around when he was around. And he had this wonderful quote where he said, what you see on the movie screen of your mind is a preview of life's coming attractions. I just love that quote. And it's got something to do with this whole setting yourself up. What are you going to see going forward? So in terms of happiness strategies, for me, I kind of think, well, how can you set yourself up for happiness on a daily basis? Remember I said earlier, happiness is a daily ritual. So here we are. I'm out of the quicksand. I'm on this train from Sandringham, going into the city to Collins Street with people I don't like, who don't even know me, and I'm trying to just get through the wind and the cold and the rain, etc. And I'm trying to get forward. And I remembered my parents and growing up, and I remembered that going to church as a kid, there was a song they used to sing. And the song was like, the words were something like this: the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases, His mercies never come to an end, they are new every morning. And I couldn't get the song out of my head. But then I started thinking about the song. You know, his love never ceases, his mercies are new every morning, and that's when it hit me. They knew every morning. It's like getting bread from the bakery. If you go tomorrow, you'll miss today's bread because it's going to be stale. You've got to go and fetch your bread every single day. You've got to go and fetch your mercies every single day. Which comes to, how do you set your mind up every single day for happiness? And so I ask myself 3 questions every single day on the train. Just 3, to set my mind up for happiness. And what evolved out of that was I actually created a gratitude journal, which I've sold, and people have got Facebook groups online, and they've been working in this gratitude space. And here are the questions. Question number 1, what's going to be my adventure today? Just something, Albert Einstein, to look forward to. Now, it could be a huge adventure. I went crocodile diving, cage diving with crocs last year, and I've climbed his rock and all. It could be a huge, or it could be a small thing, like going down Hampton Street for a coffee. Or today, coming here to talk to you guys. But something to look forward to. What's going to be my adventure today? And just think about it. The second thing is, who can I show kindness to today, and what will it be? That's back to that community thing. So you actually think about, get a picture of someone in your head. Who can I show kindness to today? Maybe it's picking up the phone, just to have a conversation with an old friend. Or I've got a retired nun who lives in my court at number 1, and I'll go and have a cup of tea with her, or take her out for a pizza, or just go and have a chat. But who can I show a kindness to? And if you're doing this as a ritual every single morning and you write it down, it's something that you do for the day. And sometimes you can't think of anybody. But you know what happens? They show up during the day, don't they? You know why? Because you've asked your brain to go and look for that situation. So that's question number 2. Question number 3. What's a kindness I'm going to show myself today? Ooh, tough one. Tough one. Am I going to forgive myself for not doing all 10 things on the to-do list, but I actually got to 9? All my bad habits, all my mistakes, all my errors? Or maybe I should take myself for a massage this afternoon just because that's what I deserve. But what's a kindness I'm going to show to myself? And then at the end of that, a bit of a reflection on what am I grateful for? I did that religiously every single day. And you look at the gratitude journals and what I wrote, and what was really interesting is once you start focusing on these things, it's really hard to be down. And there are days when I've had a bit of a crappy day, because we don't have perfect days every day. And sometimes I go, yeah, you didn't do that this morning, did you? I went, no. So there's something about setting yourself up for happiness. And for me, this is just one of many tools that I write about in my book. Purpose. Got a thing called the law of subtraction, which is a very interesting thing. I worked with a wonderful American trainer, Steph Burns. She's just a fantastic trainer, and she was sharing this story about turning 50. And you know, a lot of people get to 50 and we think we're going up, moving towards our golden years, and life's going to start going downhill now. We've fulfilled our useful purpose, and blah blah blah. And she said, "Hang on a second." And she came up with this thing that I've called the law of subtraction. She said, "You know what?" She said, "I'm probably going to work till I'm about 70, 75. That's way before Tony Abbott came up. I was just telling you. This is going back. You can see when the book was written. So this is way before Tony Abbott, unless he bought my book. But she said, "I'm going to work till about 75. And she went, "That's another 25 years. Goodness, what am I going to do the next 25 years? So she did the law of subtraction, where she subtracted 25 from her current age of 50 and went back to when she was 25 and went, wow, that was a block. Look how much I did from 25 to 50. I've got the same block of time ahead of me again. Except this time, hopefully, I'm a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and I can start to choose things that I want to do, things that give me pleasure, things that give me value. So that means I've got to take a year off, which she's done, and go to university and study and learn a new skill. Why not? You've got 25 years to go. So I just found it a very powerful and empowering thing, thinking about what I'm going to do in the future, looking forward. Another little tool around my good friend Anthony Robbins, motion creates emotion. And again, for me, if I'm lying in bed and just don't get out of bed for whatever reason, or just procrastinate, it's very easy to kind of spiral down. So he's got this thing called the 10-minute rule, which I really love. And the 10-minute rule is this. The stuff that you really don't want to do, in Steph's case it was running and exercise. Give yourself permission to only do it for 10 minutes. And if you're not happy doing it, you can stop. So Steph would say, I put my running clothes out at night, wake up in the morning, go, oh, it's only for 10 minutes. If I'm not enjoying it, I know I can stop. But of course, by the time you've got dressed and got the gear on and you're moving, guess what tends to happen? You keep going. So I apply this rule to many things. I hate filing and admin, it's my worst. And I go, Pete, you know what, just have a crack for 10 minutes. If you're really not enjoying it, you can stop, and before you know it, you're into it, because motion creates emotion. And there's a heap of things, by the way, yeah, I'll talk about it in a moment. I'd like to talk just a quick tangent around the business world, because for me, again, that's where my heart and my passion lives. And I was in Denmark in February in Copenhagen. I was very lucky to meet with a gentleman called Alex Kierf. Alex Kierf is globally known as the Chief Happiness Officer. He sold his IT business, and he's got this company called Woohoo Inc., and he's the Chief Happiness Officer of this company. Very, very interesting man. And I'm doing a lot of work with him at the moment. And he talks about happiness at work, and in Denmark they've actually got an expression for it, sorry, and that didn't come up. The expression is Arbejdsglæde, the joy of work. I went to Denmark in February and I started looking around for this thing called Arbejdsglæde. You know what? I saw it everywhere. In the supermarkets, the people who were serving me. When I was going to the gym, the people who were cleaning the toilets in the gym. When I just saw this whole notion of Arbejdsglæde, this happiness at work everywhere. And Alex has got a couple of wonderful frames, and one of the frames I'd like to leave with you, if you are a business leader or an employer or an HR manager or whatever it is that you do, ask the question, what is it that makes people happy at work? Alex says there's two things that make people happy at work. Results and relationships. Now think about results for a moment. You know, people like to know that they're achieving things, that they're learning, that they're growing, that they're developing, that they're getting runs on the board and getting results. What happens when people aren't getting results? We invest time and effort and money in coaching and time management courses and, you know, helping people to perform better and better and better. How much time, effort and money do we invest in relationships? If there are two things that make people happy at work, and relationships with yourself, so companies like Google and others have got programs to search inside yourself, leadership thing, whatever, getting to know yourself, but relationships that you have with others in the workplace as well. So I was just really fascinated, because often we've got this whole focus on results only, but we forget about this relationship thing. So I'd like to just wrap up and thank you for, it's so hard to just pick a few things out of what is a very, very big subject and a very, very big topic. But if I can wrap up, I guess for me, it's back to the big question. What is it? Why is it that people have got so little tend to be so joyful? What have we forgotten? Community, gratitude, and purpose or spirituality. And I think for me, if we can get those foundation stones in place, then when the stuff really does proverbially hit the fan, we've got something to hold on to, both internally but also the people that we've connected with. In my life, these are the things that have helped me move from where I was to where I am today, and it's what I'm passionate about in the workplace. There's another thing that I'm passionate about, and you didn't mention this in the introduction. Shame on you. But then again, that's just, you know...
I'm unhappy now.
What can you expect? Growing up as a missionary kid in South Africa, we all wanted to get out of there, man. Like, we want to go and see the world. So we all applied to become Rotary Exchange students. 1,000 people in the district applied. They were choosing 100. And I figured I had no chance. My parents weren't wealthy. I wasn't a prefect. I wasn't an elite sports person. Nah. And then one day I got this letter. And it arrived in the mail. And it said, "Dear Pete, congratulations. You've been selected to be a Rotary Exchange student. And you're going to this place called Australia." I've got to tell you the truth, I didn't know where Australia was. And in those days we didn't have Google and the internet, so out came the atlas. Oh, all right. Oh, that's Australia over there. And then the next line of the letter says, "And you're going to this bustling metropolis called Albury-Wodonga." And so in 1983, I spent my full year as a Rotary Exchange student in Albury-Wodonga. It was life-changing for me. It was absolutely life-changing. I played Aussie Rules on a Wednesday, League on a Tuesday, Union on a Sunday. I had a great time, really fell in love with the Riverina region. And I've come back to Australia, and this is where I'm living. And part of what I try and do is support my Rotary Club, which is the Rotary Club of Brighton Beach, where I've been a member. And unfortunately, with my work, I'm doing so much travel and speaking that I can't attend as regularly often as I'd like to. But how can I help and how can I support the Rotary Club of Brighton Beach? So my focus tonight in coming and sharing my story with you is that I do have copies of my book here. and the proceeds of that are going towards the Rotary Club of Brighton Beach and raising funds for the community there. The book's got 3 parts to it. Part 1 is a lot more detail about community purpose and gratitude, so answering the big question. Part 2 is 12 skills around managing yourself, personal development, influencing people, all that kind of stuff, so personal development skills. Part 3 is just looking at the corporate world and what's actually happening there. So if you'd like to avail yourselves of a copy, or if you've got someone in your life that you think might need a little bit of inspiration or a little bit of support, then please feel free. We've got copies of the book at the back. They're $30 each. $50 for 2. If you can think of someone you'd like to buy a book for, yes, we take credit card as well, so we're prepared for that. And it's just kind of my way of giving back and supporting Rotary as well. So thank you for listening to me.